Eowyn didn't know the Alpha King had been watching her for weeks. She didn't know that her name had been whispered in war councils, debated by advisors, written in letters sealed with blood-red wax. And she definitely didn't know that being shoved into the selection line as a cruel joke would set into motion events that would shake the entire kingdom to its core. All she knew was that her knees ached from scrubbing Lady Harlow's marble floors since before dawn, and that if she didn't finish polishing the silver before the ceremony began, she'd earn another lashing. The Vane estate buzzed with chaos. Servants sprinted through corridors carrying gowns, jewels, and perfumed oils. Seamstresses made last-minute alterations while hairdressers worked miracles with pins and flowers. Today was selection day, the day the newly crowned Alpha King would walk among the realm's eligible daughters and choose his queen. Every noble family had prepared for this moment for months, years even. Daughters had been tutored in grace, schooled in conversation, starved into slenderness. The Vane household alone had 3 daughters competing: Celestine, Margot, and Ivy. Each one lovelier than the last. Each one cruel in ways that left no visible marks. Eowyn kept her head down as she worked. Invisibility was survival. Her mother had taught her that much before Lord Vane had her executed for witchcraft 7 years ago. "You missed a spot." Eowyn flinched. Celestine stood above her, golden hair cascading over a gown of midnight blue, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Apologies, my lady." Eowyn dipped her head lower, scrubbing at an invisible stain. "Look at me when I speak to you." Slowly, Eowyn raised her eyes. She'd learned long ago to keep her gaze unfocused, to look without truly seeing. Because when she looked, really looked, she saw things people preferred to keep hidden. The shadow of Celestine's soul writhed behind her pretty face. Envy, malice, a cold, calculated cruelty that enjoyed causing pain. Eowyn looked away quickly. Those eyes, Celestine's lip curled, like a corpse's. "It's no wonder no one will ever choose you." She laughed, high and bright, and her sisters appeared behind her like summoned demons. "Actually, I've just had the most delicious idea." Margot tilted her head. "Oh? The selection requires all eligible unmated females to present themselves. Our little ghost here qualifies, doesn't she?" Ivy's eyes widened with delight. "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't I?" Celestine's smile turned predatory. "Fetch her a dress, something hideous. Let the Alpha King see exactly what the bottom of the barrel looks like. Perhaps the contrast will make us shine brighter." Eowyn's blood went cold. "My lady, please." "That wasn't a request." Celestine gripped her chin, forcing their eyes to meet. "You'll stand in that line, little ghost. And when the king passes you by without a second glance, everyone will see exactly what you are. Nothing. No one. Unchosen." The word echoed through Eowyn's mind as rough hands dragged her away to be dressed for her own humiliation. The great hall of Ashenmore Castle could hold 1,000 souls. Today, it held 200 of the realm's finest daughters arranged in perfect rows, each one a portrait of noble breeding and desperate ambition. And Eowyn, shoved into the back corner, wearing a faded gray dress that had been deliberately torn at the hem. Whispers followed her like flies on carrion. "Is that a servant? Look at her eyes." Unsettling. The Vane girl's idea of a joke, apparently. Pathetic. Eowyn stared at the floor, counting the stones, willing herself to disappear. Just survive the next hour. Let the king make his choice. Celestine, probably, or one of the other glittering creatures in the front row, and then she could return to her shadows and be forgotten. Trumpets silenced the crowd. "His Royal Majesty, Alpha King Kaelin of the Ashenmore throne." The doors opened, and Eowyn made the mistake of looking up. He was nothing like she'd imagined. The rumors painted him as a battle-scarred warrior, cold and calculating, forged by tragedy when his parents were assassinated 3 years ago. She'd expected hardness, brutality even. Instead, she saw a man who moved like controlled fire. Dark hair swept back from a face that was almost too beautiful, all sharp cheekbones and a jaw that could cut stone. His eyes swept the room with piercing intensity, the color of a winter forest, deep green flecked with gold. But it was what she saw beneath that stole her breath. His soul blazed, not with cruelty or corruption like Lord Vane's, not with the petty darkness of Celestine. Kaelin's essence burned with something she'd never encountered. Purpose so fierce it was almost painful to witness, wrapped around a core of profound, aching loneliness. He's searching for something, she realized, and he hasn't found it. The king began to walk. The front row preened. Celestine executed a perfect curtsy, her smile radiant, her cleavage strategically displayed. Margot batted her lashes. Ivy practically vibrated with eagerness. Kaelin passed them without a glance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as he moved through the second row. The third. Noble daughters reached for him with desperate eyes. He walked on, his expression unreadable, that forest gaze cutting through silk and jewels like they were smoke. He reached the back of the hall. The whispers turned to gasps. Eowyn froze as those green-gold eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that felt like being struck by lightning. He saw her. Not through her. Into her. Like he could read everything she'd ever hidden. The Alpha King stopped directly in front of her. "This one," he said, his voice low and resonant. "What's your name?" She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. He extended his hand, palm up, an invitation rather than a command. "Come with me." Behind her, she heard Celestine's strangled gasp of disbelief. Around them, 200 noble daughters stood in stunned silence as the Alpha King of Ashenmoor ignored every carefully cultivated flower in the garden and chose the weed they'd planted as a joke. Eowyn's fingers touched his palm. And everything changed. The moment their skin made contact, Eowyn felt it. A jolt of recognition that sank into her bones and refused to let go. Something ancient stirred in her chest, reaching toward him like a vine seeking sunlight. From the flicker in his eyes, he felt it too. But he said nothing, simply closed his fingers around hers with a gentleness that surprised her, and led her out of the great hall, past the gaping crowd, through corridors she'd never been permitted to walk. Guards fell into step behind them. Servants pressed against walls to let them pass. Everyone stared. Eowyn's mind raced. This is a mistake. He'll realize any moment. He'll send me back. And Celestine will... "You're trembling," Kaelin observed, not breaking stride. "I'm terrified," she admitted before she could stop herself. "Of me? Of everything." Something almost like a smile ghosted across his lips. "Honest. That's rare in these halls." He stopped at a heavy oak door guarded by 2 warriors who looked capable of killing with their bare hands. At their king's nod, they opened the door and stepped aside. The room beyond was a private study. Warm firelight, walls lined with maps and books, the scent of cedar and something darker. Dangerous. Kaelin released her hand and moved to pour wine from a crystal decanter. The loss of contact left Eowyn feeling strangely hollow. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "Thousands." "Start with one." Eowyn swallowed hard. "Why me?" He turned, offering her a glass. When she hesitated, he took a sip from it first, then extended it again. "Not poisoned, then." She accepted it with unsteady hands. "Because you're the only woman in that hall who can do what I need done," Kaelin said. "And before you deny it, I know what you are, Eowyn. I know what you can see when you look at people. I know your mother had the same gift before Lord Vane convinced my father she was practicing dark magic. And I know you've spent 7 years hiding, pretending to be invisible, terrified of meeting the same fate." The wine glass nearly slipped from her grip. How? Your mother left records, hidden ones, meant to protect you, which found their way to me 6 months ago when I started searching for someone with your particular abilities. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. I'm sorry for what happened to her. My father was deceived by men he trusted. I intend to correct that injustice, among others. Elowen's vision blurred. 7 years of silence, of swallowing grief like glass, of pretending her mother had never existed. And here was the king speaking her truth aloud like it mattered. What do you want from me? She whispered. Kalen set down his glass, his expression hardening into something bleak. 3 years ago, my younger sister Mira was taken from this castle during a diplomatic feast. We found her guards slaughtered. No ransom demands, no trail, just silence. He paused, and Elowen saw that fierce loneliness flare in his soul again, grief held at bay by sheer will. Someone in my inner council orchestrated it. One of the men who advises me, breaks bread with me, swears loyalty to my face, is responsible for my sister's disappearance. I need to know who. The weight of his words settled over her. You want me to look at them, she said slowly. Your counsel, and tell you which one is lying. Yes. That's why you chose me publicly, so I'd have access, so they couldn't question my presence. Yes. Elowen's mind spun. And what happens to me when this is over? When you have what you need? Kalen's gaze held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. That depends on you. Help me find my sister. Identify the traitor, and I'll give you anything you ask. Gold. Land. A new identity far from anyone who's ever hurt you. He stepped closer, and she forgot how to breathe. But I won't force you. This has to be your choice. And if I refuse? Then I escort you from this castle tonight with enough gold to disappear, and I find another way. His jaw tightened. A slower way, one that might cost Mira her life. The firelight played across his features, illuminating the desperation he was fighting to hide. A king, brought to his knees by love for his sister. Willing to place his fate in the hands of a servant with cursed eyes. How do I know I can trust you? Elowen asked. You don't. His honesty was brutal. But you can look at me. Really look. See what I am beneath the crown. And then decide. It was an invitation no one had ever offered her. Permission to use her gift instead of hiding it. Elowen met his eyes and let herself see. His soul blazed open before her, and what she found there made her knees weaken. Elowen had looked into hundreds of souls over her 23 years. She'd seen greed coiled like serpents, lust burning like fever, cruelty worn like armor. She'd learned to glance quickly, absorb what she needed, and look away before the darkness could seep into her own spirit. But Kalen's soul was nothing like the others. It burned with a light so fierce she almost had to shield herself. Loyalty. Not the performative kind lords displayed at court, but the variety that would die before betraying those it loved. Grief, yes, vast and heavy, for parents murdered and a sister stolen. But beneath it all, a desperate, aching hope that he was terrified to feel. And wrapped around everything, a loneliness so profound it made her chest physically hurt. He's been alone, she realized. Surrounded by people, but utterly alone, trusting no one, carrying everything. She also saw something else, something that made her breath hitch. A thread, golden and faint, stretching from his soul toward her. The mate bond. She'd heard whispers of it. Her mother had described it once, voice soft with wonder. When you find the one fate chose for you, you'll know. It feels like coming home to a place you've never been. Elowen severed the connection, gasping, stumbling backward. Kalen caught her elbow before she could fall. His touch sent another jolt through her, and she saw his jaw tighten. He felt it too. What did you see? His voice was carefully controlled. She couldn't tell him about the thread. Not yet. maybe not ever. Instead, she focused on what mattered. You're telling the truth about everything. She steadied herself, meeting his eyes. You genuinely don't know who took your sister, and you'd burn the world to get her back. Something flickered across his face. Relief, perhaps, that she believed him. Then you'll help me? Elwyn thought of Lord Vane's estate, the endless scrubbing, the casual cruelty, Celestine's laughter, sharp as broken glass. She thought of her mother, dragged from their cottage at dawn, screaming Elwyn's name as flames consumed her. And she thought of Mira, 16 years old when taken, now 19, stolen from her home by someone she should have been able to trust. I'll help you, Elwyn said, but I want more than gold. Kaelin's eyebrow rose slightly. Name it. Lord Vane had my mother killed based on lies he fed to your father. His daughters have spent 7 years making my life a living hell. She lifted her chin, refusing to let her voice shake. When this is over, I want justice, a formal inquiry, and if he's found guilty, he will be. Kaelin's voice went cold as iron. I've already seen the evidence my father was too blind to examine. Vane accused your mother to cover his own dealings with dark traders. He used my father's paranoia as a weapon. His expression hardened. I was going to deal with him eventually. You've simply moved up the timeline. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. She'd always suspected, but hearing it spoken aloud. My mother died for nothing? Your mother died because powerful men are cowards who destroy what they can't control. Kaelin's hand was still on her elbow, steady and warm. I can't bring her back, but I can make sure her death is answered. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not yet. Then we have a deal. We need to seal it. Kaelin released her, moving to his desk. He withdrew a small blade, silver with a handle wrapped in black leather. A blood oath, unbreakable by either party. You help me find Mira and identify the traitor. I ensure Vane faces justice and you walk free with whatever you desire. Gold, land, a new life. And neither of us can betray the other until our obligations are fulfilled. Elwyn watched him draw the blade across his palm without hesitation. Blood welled up, dark and red. He offered her the knife, handle first. Your choice, he said quietly. Your terms. I won't force you. She took the blade. The cut stung, sharp and clarifying. When she pressed her bloody palm to his, the world tilted. Magic surged between them. Old magic, the kind that predated kingdoms and thrones. It wrapped around their joined hands, sank into their skin, and settled somewhere deep in her chest. But beneath the oath, she felt that golden thread again, pulsing brighter now. Mate. The word echoed through her mind, unbidden and undeniable. Kaelin's grip tightened on her hand, his breathing shifting almost imperceptibly. His eyes searched hers with an intensity that told her everything. He felt it too, and neither of them mentioned it. The chambers they gave Elwyn were larger than Lord Vane's entire servant quarters. A canopied bed dominated one wall, draped in deep emerald silk. A fireplace crackled with warmth. Windows overlooked the castle gardens, where moonlight turned stone paths to silver ribbons. There was a copper bathing tub, already filled with steaming water scattered with rose petals. A wardrobe stocked with gowns finer than anything Celestine owned. It felt like a dream, the kind you wake from with cruel laughter ringing in your ears. His Majesty instructed me to attend to your needs. The woman who'd escorted her, Brina, she'd said, with weathered hands and kind eyes, gestured to the wardrobe. Tomorrow, you'll be presented to the court as the king's chosen. You'll need to look the part. I'm not his chosen, Elwyn said automatically. Not really. This is an arrangement. Brina's expression shifted, something knowing, almost amused. Of course, my lady. My lady. The words felt wrong on Eloan's skin. After Brina left, Eloan sank into the bath and let the heat unknot muscles that had been tense for years. She scrubbed away the grime of servitude, watched the water turn gray with 7 years of survival. But she couldn't wash away the unease settling in her chest. Kaelin trusted her. Or at least, he trusted her gift. But did he understand what it cost her to use it? Every time she looked into a corrupt soul, some of that darkness clung to her, seeped into her dreams. Left stains she couldn't quite scrub clean. Just find Mira, find the traitor, get your justice, and leave. Simple. Clean. A transaction, except for that golden thread, still humming beneath her ribs. Sleep came eventually, but it was restless. Dreams of fire, her mother's screams, hands reaching for her through smoke. A knock startled her awake. Gray dawn light filtered through the windows. Brina entered with a tray of food and an apologetic smile. His Majesty requests your presence at the council meeting. You have 1 hour. 1 hour. To prepare herself for walking into a room full of powerful men, one of whom had orchestrated the kidnapping of a princess. Eloan dressed in the simplest gown she could find. Deep blue, modest, nothing that would draw unnecessary attention. She needed to observe, not be observed. Brina led her through corridors that hummed with activity. Servants who'd been her equals yesterday now bowed their heads as she passed. Guards stood straighter. Courtiers whispered behind gloved hands. The servant the king chose. Did you see her eyes? Unsettling. Unnatural. What was he thinking? She heard every word, filed each one away, but one conversation made her steps falter. 2 men in counselor robes, speaking in low voices near an archway. Doesn't matter what she is, she'll be dead before the moon turns full, just like the last one he brought in to help. Are you certain? Lord Vane received word this morning, she's already been marked. They moved on before Eloan could hear more. Her blood turned to ice. Marked. The word echoed in her mind as Brina led her onward, oblivious. Someone in this castle wanted her dead, and Lord Vane, hundreds of miles away, already knew about it, which meant the traitor wasn't just on Kaelin's council. They had allies everywhere. The council chamber was a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky. 7 chairs ringed a central table carved from ancient oak, and 7 men occupied those chairs, each one powerful enough to have orchestrated a princess's disappearance. Kaelin sat at the head, his presence commanding even in stillness. When Eloan entered, his eyes found hers immediately. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the murmured conversations. "This is Lady Eloan. She'll be assisting with the investigation into my sister's disappearance. I expect your full cooperation." Lady. The title still felt like a borrowed coat. The counselors' reactions varied. Some assessed her with cold calculation. Others dismissed her with barely concealed contempt. One, a silver-haired man with a neat beard, smiled warmly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Your Majesty, with respect," said a heavy-set lord with jowls that trembled when he spoke. "What qualifications does this woman possess? We've had investigators for 3 years." Investigators who found nothing. Kaelin's tone brooked no argument. "Lady Eloan has skills none of your investigators possess. You'll understand soon enough." Eloan took her place in a chair set slightly back from the table, close enough to observe, removed enough to seem unthreatening. And she began to look. The heavy-set lord first, Counselor Barrick. His soul was a murky swamp of petty corruptions, bribes taken, taxes skimmed, a mistress hidden in the merchant district. Distasteful, but nothing that screamed kidnapper. Next, a thin man with a hawkish nose, Counselor Fenwick. Ambition coiled through him like a starving snake, but his thoughts fixated on trade routes and profit margins. He wanted power through commerce, not violence. the silver-haired smiler, Lord Aldrich. Elowyn's gaze lingered on him. His surface was polished, charming, the perfect courtier. But beneath, she pushed deeper and recoiled. His soul was a labyrinth of locked doors, secrets layered upon secrets, guarded by walls she'd never encountered before. Someone had trained him to hide. Someone had taught him to shield himself from exactly what she could do. He knows about me, she realized with growing horror. He knows what I am, and he's prepared. Lord Aldrich's smile never wavered, but his eyes met hers for just a moment, and she saw recognition flash through them. A warning, a threat. I see you seeing me, and you won't live long enough to tell anyone. Elowyn forced her gaze to move on, her pulse hammering. She couldn't let him know she'd noticed, couldn't tip her hand. The remaining counselors blurred together as she fought to maintain composure. Counselor Thorne, whose soul reeked of old guilt, a crime decades past that still haunted him. Lord Merrick, young and nervous, hiding nothing but insecurity and a secret fondness for poetry. Commander Sorin, the military advisor, whose loyalty to Kaelin burned almost as bright as the king's own fire. But Lord Aldrich was wrong in ways she couldn't fully articulate. The meeting droned on. Reports about border security, updates on search parties, arguments about resource allocation. Elowyn listened with half an ear, her mind racing. When the session finally ended, she felt hollowed out. Looking at 7 souls in succession had drained her more than she'd anticipated. Cold sweat dampened her spine. Kaelin noticed. Of course he did. Walk with me, he murmured as the counselors filed out. He led her through a side door into a private corridor, away from watching eyes. You saw something. It wasn't a question. Elowyn leaned against the stone wall, steadying herself. Lord Aldrich, he's different. Shielded. I've never felt anything like it. Kaelin's expression darkened. Aldrich has served the crown since my grandfather's reign. He practically raised me after my parents died. I know what I saw, and it wasn't innocent. I believe you. His immediate acceptance surprised her. I suspected everyone. That's why I needed you. Kaelin ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that made him look younger, less like a king and more like a man drowning in impossible choices. Aldrich has access to everything: council schedules, security rotations, my sister's daily routine. There's more. Elowyn hesitated, then told him about the overheard conversation. The mark. Lord Vane's involvement. Kaelin went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was ice-sheathing fire. They're connected. Vane and Aldrich. That's how your mother was condemned. Aldrich would have had my father's ear. Would have helped legitimize the accusations. The implications crashed over Elowyn like a cold wave. Her mother's death wasn't just Vane's cruelty. It was orchestrated. Part of something larger. They've been planning this for years, she whispered, positioning themselves, eliminating threats. My mother's gift. She would have seen what Aldrich was, if she'd ever been allowed near court. So they made sure she never got the chance. Kaelin's hand found hers. The touch was grounding, warm, comfort and connection in the midst of terrible revelation. We need proof, Elowyn said. Something concrete before we move against him. If he has allies, if Vane is involved, then we're fighting a conspiracy that runs deeper than one traitor on my council. Yes. Kaelin's grip tightened on her hand. Then we dig deeper. His eyes met hers with fierce determination. Together. But as Elowyn nodded, she couldn't shake the memory of Lord Aldrich's smile. He knew she'd seen him, and whatever he was planning, she'd just become a target he couldn't afford to ignore. The next 4 days fell into a rhythm that Elowyn hadn't expected. Mornings, she attended council meetings, carefully cataloging every flicker of darkness she detected. Lord Aldrich remained impenetrable. but she gathered fragments, glances exchanged with certain guards, messages delivered by servants who disappeared before she could question them. A pattern was forming, though she couldn't yet see its shape. Afternoons, Kaylin insisted she rest. The soul reading drained her more than she wanted to admit, leaving her pale and shaking after each session. "You're no use to me," collapsed, he said when she protested. But his voice was gentle, and his hand lingered on her shoulder a moment too long. Evenings became something else entirely. He'd find her in the library, or she'd find him on the battlements, and they'd talk. Not about the investigation, about everything else. His childhood before tragedy hardened him. Her mother's garden, where she'd learned to identify herbs by moonlight. The sister he was desperate to save. The life she'd imagined before servitude crushed it out of her. On the fourth night, she found him in the castle's forgotten east tower, standing before a portrait she'd never seen. A woman with Kaylin's eyes and a girl with his stubborn jaw. His mother and Mira. She painted this herself, Kaylin said without turning. My mother. She had artist's hands. Mira inherited them. Elowen stepped closer, studying the brushwork. They're beautiful. They were everything. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. When they killed my parents, I survived because I was away, training with the northern packs. I've never stopped wondering if that was luck or if someone arranged it. Arranged? If Aldrich has been planning this for years, then my parents' assassination might not have been a random border attack. He finally turned to face her, and the raw grief in his expression made her throat tighten. I've been ruling a kingdom built on lies, trusting men who smile while they sharpen knives for my back. You trust Commander Soren? Elowen said softly. His loyalty is genuine. I'd stake my life on it. And me? The question was quiet, almost vulnerable. Do you trust me? Elowen considered lying, protecting herself the way she'd learned to do. But looking at him now, moonlight carving shadows across his face, she couldn't. More than I've trusted anyone since my mother died. Something shifted in his expression. The iron control wavered, and beneath it she glimpsed the man rather than the king. Lonely, exhausted, desperately wanting to believe he wasn't alone anymore. Elowen. Her name sounded different in his voice, like a prayer, like a promise. I need to tell you something. The bond, she whispered. I know. His eyes widened slightly. You felt it. From the first moment you touched my hand in the great hall. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night. I didn't want to. I've spent my whole life avoiding connection. And then you. Then I walked past 200 women and chose the one person in that room who didn't want to be chosen. Why? The question she'd been afraid to ask. The mate bond doesn't force selection. You could have ignored it, chosen someone suitable. Suitable? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been surrounded by suitable my entire life. Women who wanted my crown. Advisors who wanted my ear. Lords who wanted my favor. He stepped closer, and her pulse quickened. You're the first person who's looked at me, truly looked, and seen something worth saving. I saw loneliness, she admitted, and grief, and a man carrying more than anyone should bear alone. And you still stayed. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. I didn't have a choice. We made an oath. You had a choice. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced her jaw with heartbreaking tenderness. You could have taken the gold and run. Instead, you're here, risking your life for a sister you've never met, and a king who has no right to ask anything of you. Kaylin, I'm trying very hard not to kiss you right now, he said roughly. Because if I start, I don't think I'll be able to stop. And you deserve better than a king who's drowning in conspiracy and grief. Elowen rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. He went rigid with shock. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a desperation that made her knees buckle. His mouth was warm, demanding, worshipping her like she was something precious he'd never expected to find. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, he pressed his forehead to hers. "This complicates things," he murmured. "I know. I still won't trap you. When this is over, ask me then." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "When Mira is home and Aldrich is dealt with. Ask me then, and I'll give you an honest answer. And if your answer is no," the vulnerability in his voice nearly undid her. "Then you'll let me go," she said softly. "Because that's who you are. It'll destroy me." "I know." She kissed him again, softer this time. "But I don't think my answer will be no." Hope flickered in his eyes, fragile and fierce. "I can live on, maybe." "Good." She smiled despite everything. "Because maybe is all I have right now." He walked her back to her chambers, their fingers intertwined. At her door, he kissed her once more. Slow, thorough, a promise of everything he couldn't yet say. "Good night, Elowen. Good night, my king." She closed the door and leaned against it, pulse racing, lips tingling, wondering how she'd gone from scrubbing floors to kissing kings in the span of a week. And knowing that everything was about to get much more dangerous. The attack came at midnight. Elowen woke to the sound of her door splintering inward. 3 men in dark masks rushed the room before she could scream. She rolled off the bed, grabbing the knife Kaelin had insisted she keep under her pillow. Her first slash caught one attacker across the forearm. He howled, stumbling back. But there were 3 of them and 1 of her. Hands seized her hair, yanking her head back. A blade pressed against her throat. "The king's little pet," a voice hissed in her ear. "Lord Aldrich sends his regards." Aldrich. No more pretense then. He'd made his move. "Kill me, and you'll never leave this castle alive," she gasped. "We're not here to kill you." The blade pressed harder, drawing a thin line of blood. "We're here to send a message." The door exploded off its hinges. Kaelin stood in the wreckage, eyes blazing with primal fury, his body half-shifted, claws extended, fangs bared, barely human. Behind him, Commander Sorin and a dozen royal guards flooded the corridor. "Release her," Kaelin growled, his voice distorted by the wolf surging beneath his skin. "Now." The assassin's grip faltered. He hadn't expected the king himself. Elowen felt the hesitation enacted. She drove her elbow backward into his ribs, dropped her weight, and twisted free as the blade sliced her shoulder instead of her throat. Kaelin moved faster than her eyes could track. One moment the assassins were standing. The next, 2 were dead on the floor, and the third was pinned against the wall by a king who looked ready to tear him apart. "Who sent you?" Kaelin's voice was barely recognizable. "Where is my sister?" The assassin laughed, blood bubbling between his lips. "You'll never find her. Lord Aldrich has planned for every contingency. Even now she's being moved. By the time you reach the estate..." His eyes went glassy. Foam appeared at his mouth. "Poison tooth," Sorin cursed, checking the body. "They all have them." Kaelin released the dead man, his chest heaving, the wolf receding slowly from his features. When he turned to Elowen, the fury drained away, replaced by something that looked like fear. "You're hurt." "It's shallow." He crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands gentle despite their lingering claws as he examined her shoulder. "I should have had guards inside your chambers. I should have..." "You couldn't have known." "I should have known." His voice broke. "If they'd succeeded. If I'd lost you." "You didn't." She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I'm here. I'm alive. And now we know for certain. Aldrich?" The name was a death sentence on Kaelin's lips. He mentioned an estate, said Mira is being moved. Sorin stepped forward. Aldrich has lands in the Eastern Highlands, remote, defensible. If he's hiding the princess anywhere, that's where she'll be. Kaelin's expression hardened into the mask of a war king. We ride at dawn. He'll be expecting that, Elowen said quietly. He planned this attack to flush you out, to make you act rashly, ride into a trap. Then what do you suggest? She thought of Aldrich's shielded soul, the locked doors. He's arrogant, confident his defenses are perfect. If I can get close to something deeply personal, something that carries a soul's imprint, I might be able to break through his shields. Find Mira's exact location before we move. Absolutely not. Kaelin's voice was iron. You're not going anywhere near him. I'm the only one who can do this. I won't risk you. It's not your risk to forbid. She held his gaze. We made an oath, remember? I help you find Mira. This is me helping. The conflict raged across his face. King versus mate, duty versus desperate need to protect her. Finally, his shoulders slumped. If we do this, you don't leave my sight. Not for a second. Agreed. He pulled her close, pressing his lips to her hair. If anything happens to you, I'll burn the world down. I know. She held him tighter. That's what I'm counting on. They spent what remained of the night planning. Commander Soren proved invaluable, loyal to the bone, tactical genius. He mapped Aldrich's known properties, marked guard rotations, and identified weak points in the estate's defenses. The eastern compound is built into a cliffside, Soren explained, tracing paths on the map. One road in, sheer drops on 3 sides, but there's an old servant's passage through the caves below, collapsed years ago. Or so Aldrich believes. You know otherwise? Kaelin asked. Soren's smile was grim. I made a point of knowing. Never trusted him. Elowen studied the map. I'll need something of his. Something personal. Something that might carry a trace of Mira's essence. His study in the castle. Soren nodded. He keeps private quarters on the 3rd floor. If he hasn't fled yet, there might be something left behind. He won't have fled. Kaelin's voice was certain. Arrogant men don't run, they double down. Dawn painted the sky in shades of blood and gold as they finalized the plan. Elowen would retrieve an item from Aldrich's study while Soren's men created a diversion. Kaelin would confront Aldrich publicly, forcing him to reveal his position. Meanwhile, a second team would take the cave passage to the estate. Before they separated, Kaelin pulled Elowen aside. Whatever happens today, I need you to know something. Don't. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't say goodbye. Say until later. His eyes softened. Until later, then. He kissed her hard and fast. Come back to me. Always. She slipped away toward Aldrich's quarters, Brina at her side, loyal Brina, who'd revealed herself as one of Soren's informants all along. He keeps his personal effects in a lockbox, Brina whispered. Silver, with a wolf's head clasp. The study was empty, Aldrich already gone to face the king's summons. Elowen moved quickly, fingers trailing over surfaces until she found it. A silver box, exactly as described. Inside, letters, a signet ring, and a lock of dark hair tied with ribbon. Mira's hair. Kept as proof of life for ransom negotiations that never came. And hair, her mother had once told her, held traces of a person's essence, their soul's echo, imprinted on every strand. Elowen closed her fingers around the ribbon and let herself fall into the vision. The vision crashed over her like a wave. Stone walls, firelight, a room carved from mountain rock. Mira sat on a narrow bed thinner than her portrait, but alive. Her eyes held a defiance that 3 years of captivity hadn't broken. A woman entered, cold-faced, sharp-featured. Lord Aldrich's men report the king has taken the bait. They'll be here within the day, walking straight into our ambush. My brother isn't stupid, Mira said quietly. Your brother is blinded by grief, and the new girl. The soul reader. The woman smiled. Don't worry. She'll be dead before sunset. Mira's expression didn't change, but her hands, hidden beneath a blanket, gripped something small and sharp. She'd been waiting, preparing. The north corridor, Mira whispered to herself when the woman left. Third door. Always 3 guards. Shift change at midday. Elowen gasped out of the vision, head pounding and blood dripping from her nose. Lady Elowen! Brina caught her before she fell. I know where she is. Elowen's voice was raw. And she's ready to fight. The cave passage was narrow and treacherous. Soren led the way, his memory of the route flawless despite years since he'd last walked it. 20 of his most trusted warriors followed in silence, Elowen among them. Above them, Kaelin's confrontation with Aldrich would be unfolding, a distraction to draw defenders away from the estate's interior. They emerged in a storage cellar that smelled of damp and forgotten things. North corridor, Elowen breathed. Third door. Midday shift change. They moved. The first 2 guards died before they could raise an alarm. The third managed a shout before Soren's blade silenced him. The door burst open to reveal Mira, standing in the center of the room, clutching a sharpened piece of bed frame, looking fierce and unbroken. Took you long enough, she said, her voice cracking. Is my brother here? He's dealing with Aldrich. Then let's help him. They emerged from the caves into chaos. Kaelin's forces had breached the main gate. Fighting raged through the courtyard, steel against steel, wolf against wolf. And at the center of it all, Kaelin faced Aldrich. The traitor had shifted into his wolf form, massive, silver-furred, ancient power radiating from every movement. He'd served 3 kings and killed 2. But Kaelin fought like a man with nothing left to lose. They clashed in a blur of fur and fang. Aldrich was older, more experienced, but Kaelin was fueled by 3 years of grief and 7 days of love that had given him something to live for. Mira ran toward them before Elowen could stop her. Aldrich! The traitor's head whipped toward the princess, the prize he'd kept, the leverage he'd planned to use. In that moment of distraction, Kaelin struck. His jaws closed around Aldrich's throat. The ancient wolf crumpled, shifting back into human form as death took him, silver hair matted with blood, cruel eyes finally empty. Kaelin stood over the body, chest heaving, then turned. His sister crashed into his arms with a sob. You found me, Mira wept. You actually found me. Always. Kaelin held her like he'd never let go. I'll always find you. Elowen watched from a distance, her own eyes burning, as brother and sister clung to each other in the wreckage of Aldrich's ambitions. Then Kaelin's eyes lifted and found hers across the battlefield. Thank you, his expression said. For everything. She nodded, pressing a hand over her heart. Always. The ride home took 3 days. Mira slept most of the first day, exhaustion finally claiming her now that safety allowed it. She'd curl against her brother's side during rest stops, unwilling to let him out of sight. On the second night, Mira sought Elowen out. You're the one who found me, she said, settling beside Elowen at the fire. The soul reader. Your brother did the finding. I just saw where to look. That's not what he says. Mira's eyes, so like Kaelin's, studied her with uncomfortable intensity. He says you risked everything, that you walked into a castle full of enemies because you believed you could save a girl you'd never met. I knew what it felt like to lose someone. I didn't want your brother to feel that again. Mira was quiet for a moment. Then, he loves you. You know that, right? Elowen's breath faltered. We've only known each other a week. The bond doesn't care about time. Mira smiled, soft and knowing. Don't break his heart. He's not as strong as he pretends. On the 3rd day, they reached the castle. The celebration began immediately, Mira's return spreading through the kingdom like wildfire. But Elowen slipped away from the festivities, needing space to breathe. She found herself on the battlements, their spot. Footsteps behind her. "I thought I'd find you here." Kaelin's voice, warm and tired and achingly familiar. The noise was overwhelming. He joined her at the wall. 7 days. Our oath is fulfilled. Her chest tightened. "I know. You're free to go. The gold is ready. Vane has been arrested. His trial begins next week. Your mother will have justice." He paused, and she noticed the slight tremor in his hands. "You have everything you asked for." "Almost everything." Kaelin's eyes searched hers. "What else do you want?" "You," she thought. "Just you." "Ask me," she whispered. Understanding dawned on his face. "Stay." His voice was rough with emotion. "Not because of oaths or obligations. Stay because you want to. Stay because what we have is worth fighting for." He pressed her hands against his chest. "Stay because I love you, Elowen. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Her eyes grew wet, emotion spilling over. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I've never let myself want anything this much." "Neither have I." He kissed the dampness from her cheeks. "Be terrified with me. Let's figure it out together." "Yes." His entire face transformed. "Yes? Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I love you. Yes to all of it." Kaelin swept her into his arms and kissed her breathless, spinning her around on the battlements while the sun set golden around them. From somewhere below, Mira's voice drifted up. "Finally!" They both laughed, foreheads pressed together, hearts beating in sync. 3 months later, Lord Vane's trial ended with a guilty verdict on all counts: conspiracy, false accusation, accessory to murder, treason. He hanged at dawn on a gray morning, and Elowen didn't attend. She'd already made her peace. Instead, she spent that morning in the castle garden, planting herbs, lavender and rosemary, sage and thyme, the same ones her mother had grown in their cottage. "She'd be proud of you," Mira said, joining her in the dirt. "Your mother. Seeing who you've become." "I hope so." Elowen patted soil around a seedling. "I spent so long hiding what I could do." "It brought you here." Mira smiled. "To us. To him." "Speaking of him, have you seen your brother? He was acting strange this morning." The princess's expression was pure innocence. "Nothing at all. But you might want to check the East Tower." The East Tower. Where they'd first kissed. Elowen's pulse quickened. She found him standing before his mother's portrait, dressed in formal attire she'd never seen before. When he turned at her approach, his eyes held terror and hope in equal measure. "Elowen." He stepped forward, took her hands. "I had a speech prepared." "A speech?" "Mira helped me write it. Very eloquent." He laughed nervously. "I've completely forgotten every word." She smiled. "Then just say what you feel." Kaelin took a breath. 3 months ago, I walked into a selection ceremony expecting to find a political alliance. Instead, I found you. This fierce, beautiful woman who'd been treated like she was invisible her entire life, but who blazed brighter than anyone else in that room. His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You gave me my sister back. You gave me the truth about my parents. You gave me something to hope for when I'd forgotten how." He dropped to one knee. Elowen's breath caught. "I'm not asking because of the bond," he said quietly. "I'm asking because I've never loved anyone the way I love you. Because every morning I wake up grateful that you chose to stay." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside, a ring, simple silver band, set with an emerald that matched his eyes. "Marry me, Elowen. Bond with me. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Joy overwhelmed her, spilling down her cheeks. "Yes." She pulled him up and kissed him hard. "Yes, yes, yes." The bonding ceremony took place under the full moon. Mira stood at her brother's side, beaming. Commander Soren served as witness, his stoic face cracked by an actual smile. And Brina wept happy tears in the front row. Their vows were simple, personal. I choose you, Kaelin said. Not because fate demanded it, but because my heart did. Today, tomorrow, forever. I choose you. I choose you, Eloin replied. You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I was worthless. You loved me when I'd forgotten I was lovable. Today, tomorrow, forever. I choose you back. The bond snapped fully into place, not a chain, but a bridge. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. Later, much later, tangled together in moonlight, he traced lazy shapes on her shoulder. Tell me something, he murmured. Something I don't know. Eloin considered. That first night. When you asked me to look at you, to see what you really were, I almost lied. Your soul was so bright it scared me. I almost told you I saw darkness, just so I could justify running away. Why didn't you? Because the loneliness in you matched mine. She kissed his chest, right over his heart. And I realized we'd been waiting for each other all along. His arms tightened around her. Your turn, she whispered. Tell me something. I knew you were my mate the moment I saw you in that servant's dress, scrubbing floors with defiance in your eyes. He smiled against her hair. I spent 3 nights convincing myself to walk away, to find someone suitable. What changed your mind? You looked up. Just for a second. The lamplight caught your eyes, and I saw everything I'd been missing. She kissed him softly. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for saying yes. Outside, the kingdom slept peacefully. Inside, 2 people who'd thought themselves destined for loneliness discovered what it meant to belong. Eloin often thought about that day in the selection hall, when they'd laughed and called her unchosen. Now she was a queen, loved, valued, chosen. They said no one would ever choose me, she murmured one evening, watching sunset from their battlements. Kaelin pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. They were wrong. His voice was soft with certainty. I walked past them all, and I'd do it again. 1,000 times. 1,000,000. She turned in his arms, smiling up at the man who'd changed everything. I know. Good. He kissed her properly, long and deep. Because I intend to spend the rest of my life reminding you, and he did. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.